Hello and welcome to this week's negotiation nugget, where I am talking about why are we afraid of asking for what we want. So this topic I thought about talking about because I was getting present to some internal narrative that I was also experiencing in certain examples, which I'll share in this negotiation nugget. That made me think, oh gosh, we are all afflicted with the same disease at times of our own thoughts not serving us, and how we can solve for those. And also recognizing that actually when it comes to optimizing value for a business and an organization, we do stop ourselves from maximizing value because too often we're not confident in ourselves to ask for what we want. So I'm going to talk to 5 key reasons that I observe through why we don't ask for what we want and why we're afraid, and also some solutions that can support that. And in between, I will try to intersperse some personal examples that I've either observed or been in my own experience to bring some of this to life. So the main reason that I observe in why we are afraid of asking for what we want is predominantly the fear of rejection and judgment from the other party. So the sense of, if I make this ask and they say no, what does that mean about me? Was I too bold? Was I too greedy? Was I being too focused on my own needs and not considering their needs enough? What will they think of me? How might they respond in that regard to my requests? Can certainly be a fear that we allow ourselves to stop getting in, allow ourselves to get in the way and stop ourselves asking for what we want. The second thing that I want to share around that is the fear of failure. So not only are we afraid of judgment and rejection generally as a human species, we are also afraid of failing. And when we hear no, or the possibility of hearing no from someone, can feel like a failure. And therefore, in avoidance of wanting to fail, we don't often ask for the maximum that we're actually seeking or what we actually want, because the thought of someone saying no to us can feel confronting, and that sense of failure that we're wanting to avoid is better left to one side. And rather than lean into that discomfort, we often choose to sit in what we're comfortable with, which is the idea of not failing. So therefore we don't ask for more of what we want. Combined with that can be a sense of lacking in self-confidence. So am I worthy of receiving what it is that I'm asking for? Who am I to make that ask? Perhaps the person that we're making the ask of is more senior, is more experienced, is in a stronger position of power. So therefore, if I'm making that ask, who am I? And therefore, the confidence around your sense of identity can be called into question when we're thinking about making the ask. Another reason why I see avoidance of making the ask and the fear of it is linked to conflict and confrontation. Most of us do not want to be drawn into conflict, and we feel like if we're making our ask or making a demand, that perhaps is going to create friction with the other party, create some tension. And tension and friction is often something we can seek to avoid because we're fearful of actually being in that environment of friction and conflict and not necessarily knowing how to respond. And therefore, in the fear of avoiding conflict and friction, we don't make the ask of what it is that we actually want. And then finally, the key point around why we might be afraid is there might be cultural or societal norms that stop us from making the ask. So how are we being perceived by society if we make the ask in an environment where it's not common to, if it's against our culture to lean in and be seen as more forceful in our ask, perhaps we might step back. And all of those external environmental impacts or social conditioning can certainly drive us to not be asking for what we want. Now, this, as I reflected on this topic and thought about what does it mean in practice, and can I give some examples of where I've personally experienced this? And I thought, yeah, there's probably two areas that I've observed myself over the years where I have felt the fear of asking for what I want, or I have felt the fear around positioning myself in a space where I'm potentially open myself up for rejection in making that ask or making that offer. Now, I want to share an example from when I first left my corporate career and started my own business in executive coaching and leadership development. I would get asked for coaching proposals by potential coaching clients. Now, at the time, having gone from a salaried role into a role that was consultative and based on a program of work and an engagement, putting proposals together was new. And I certainly found that in making my proposal and my offer and the parameters of which I was going to be engaging with future coaching clients, and then putting the all important figure and the amount that I would be charging for those services, certainly brought up a level of anxiety in me. And what that made me feel was, oh, I'm not sure I can do this. Am I asking for what I want? What I want is to be able to serve and support that potential coaching candidate to get their best value, and I want to be paid with the exchange of value that I'm providing, the value that I'm being compensated in return. And was I confident in making that ask? Not always. So I found myself going through the dialogue. They'll probably say no. They won't want to work with me. Oh my God, that's going to mean I'm failing. Perhaps I'm not good enough to be charging the amounts that I'm charging. What if they challenge me back on my pricing? What am I going to do then? How uncomfortable would that feel? And is it expected that I should be charging this amount based on the norms of the environment around me? So what are other exec coaches charging? I didn't know. And all of that was causing a level of anxiety around, asking for what I wanted. How that then translated into my behaviors, and this is something that we need to be mindful of, is after sending proposals, unless the client got back to me, I was afraid of following up. So then not following up on clients ultimately means that you're letting the interaction between you and a potential coaching candidate fall down. And not only are you doing a disservice to yourself, but you're then not doing a service to the other party that you are wanting to work with and where you could provide value. So the fear of not asking for what we want actually translates not only into that initial interaction with the other party, but the knock-on behaviors that come as a result of that fear. Another opportunity where that fear played a part and there was a different response I could have taken was around in my corporate career when I was engaging suppliers for services and products. And you would be engaging them in getting quotes, getting information, having a dialogue, expressing the needs of your business, what services you were seeking, what problems you were seeking for them to solve. And in getting a multiple set of quotes, obviously you're confident in speaking to the person when you are going to engage them in business. But the knock-on effect of being afraid of asking for what we want also translates into passing on feedback around rejecting another person when we decide their services are not what we want. And I've seen that play out a number of times, not only in my personal life, but also my professional career at the time, where the fear of actually saying what I want is to go with this party for a variety of reasons, and therefore what I want is not to continue with you, and here's all the reasons why it's not aligned, and that's okay, and just to let you know. And what I've seen a lot happen when we're afraid of asking for what we want, our behaviors in response to that mean we avoid the conversation, we avoid letting other people know we're not going to continue with them, or we're not going to have the dialogue that closes loops where they've been opened. So what I want to just close out with is, when you think about those examples, have you avoided asking for what you want in the first place? Then when you have asked for what you want, have you retreated into a corner to avoid the potential rejection of the other party saying, no, thank you, but not for me? If you've had a proposal made where someone else has asked for what they want and you don't want to give them that because you want something different, have you avoided responding because it's uncomfortable to reject somebody, or just to let them know where you're at and what you actually want, and therefore why their services or products are not aligned? So think about those scenarios for the moment. Then I want you just to have a think about how you can change your fear of not asking for what you want into actually a confidence and courage to ask for what you want. Firstly, identify any limiting beliefs that you've got and challenge them. Are the beliefs that you have about asking for what you want and the rejection that you might face actually true? Is it likely that person will reject you? Is it likely that you're not worthy of that opportunity? Is it likely that they are getting more value than the amount that you are charging or seeking for your product or service? So challenge your limiting beliefs. Ask if they are possibility focused versus limiting in your ability to get what you want. If you want to start practicing so that you can build this muscle, start with really small asks. Ask the most simple requests that even if someone said no to, wouldn't feel too much of a hit. So make it so small of an ask that people are more likely to say yes than they are to say no. And the more you can practice asking for what you want and being really clear about that, the more complex a negotiation you can go into, and then be really clear about how you're making the bigger asks because you've got comfortable with the discomfort. Prepare and practice is going to be critical. So think about what is the rejection that they might come back with. Why might they come back with that? How can you have a response in relation to that? And how can you support yourself in the feelings of discomfort that might come up when those situations occur? So allowing yourself to prepare and allowing yourself to really consider what you need and then be able to execute on that more effectively is going to serve you well. Finally, two more points before I wrap up is think about rejection as part of the process. What you do does not define your self-worth. It's who you are on the inside that counts, and what you're doing and the rejections that you're going to face along your path in different negotiations and different interactions on a human level is part of life and the growth journey that we are all on. So when you start to separate what you do from who you are, you can start to separate that your worth is not intrinsically linked to the activity that you provide or the service that you provide. So separating those out and keeping them distinct again will serve you well. And finally, build your self-confidence by taking those small steps, but celebrating your wins. Acknowledge the moments where you did make the ask, even if you didn't get the outcome you wanted. See it as a learning goal, celebrate the learning goal rather than seeing it as a performance goal that you failed on. So the more you can allow yourself to keep practicing, set yourself a learning goal first, and then celebrate doing that. And then once you've had enough practice of learning, you can start to then measure the performance outcomes. Did you get the result? And is that a good result? Was it adverse to what you expected? And how can you then improve? But start by building your confidence first. So that brings me to this end of this short negotiation nugget, more contextual around human behavior and our own fears. I hope you've got some value. I hope you've been able to relate in some way to the fears that I have talked about and that I have experienced in my own journey, and recognize they are all absolutely overcomable if we allow ourselves the opportunity to do the work. So thanks very much for listening. Enjoy, and I will speak to you again at another negotiation nugget. All the best.